When my father caught my mother cheating, he beat her to the point where she was unrecognizable. I tried to pull him away, and my mother barely escaped this disaster. After that, my mother and her lover poisoned my father. Because the matter was exposed, they locked me in the house, broke my limbs, and sewed my mouth shut with needles. It wasn't until just before I died that I learned my younger brother used my ID to borrow 100,000 yuan, and the whole family lived in luxury. When I opened my eyes again, I returned to the day my mother was caught cheating. Looking at the familiar scene before me, the corners of my mouth lifted into a smile. Go ahead, beat her to death. The more, the better. Emily silently questioned her conscience. How had she treated her over the years? Since she was born, Michael had been working hard to provide for the family so she could stay at home without worry. He shouldered all expenses. When Brian was born, Michael cherished him like a treasure. And yet, Sophia still dared to cheat. How could you do this? Michael shouted, raising the rolling pin in his hand and striking Sophia. At that moment, I instinctively raised my hands and stepped forward, realizing my body was still intact. My lips trembled without any open wounds or stitches. It turned out I had been reborn. Brian, my younger brother, turned pale and grabbed my hand, his voice trembling with tears. Sister, sister, please beg Dad. If he keeps hitting Mom, she'll die. Hearing this, Sophia immediately cast a pleading glance at me. Her body was covered in wounds, her eyes were red, and blood trickled from the corners of her mouth. Dad listens to you the most. I promise this won't happen again. It was that despicable man who seduced me. I was momentarily foolish. Even though I had died once, facing their pleas still felt like knives stabbing into my flesh, one after another. In my past life, I had softened my heart and repeatedly begged Dad to give Sophia another chance. I didn't know that on the surface she returned to the family, but in secret, she and her lover planned to poison Dad. While I was out, they cremated him in secret. Later, Sophia shamelessly remarried her lover, saying she had no choice but to find a man to support the family. One night, I overheard their conversation and discovered the truth. My father hadn't died of a heart attack. He had been poisoned. I pretended not to know and sought revenge quietly. But I accidentally broke a decoration at home. Sophia panicked and, fearing exposure, tied me to the bed with her lover. They brutally broke my limbs and sewed my mouth shut, preventing me from making any sound. I placed all my hope in Brian. But to my horror, Brian took advantage of my situation. He used my ID to borrow hundreds of thousands of yuan. Sister, don't you know professional debt holders? I heard that people with clean records like yours can borrow a lot. Consider it a contribution to the family, he said coldly, lifting my chin with a bright smile. Oh, I forgot to tell you, I'm not even Michael's son. You'll be seeing your dead father in the afterlife soon. Hearing this, sweat dripped from my forehead, and my fists clenched tightly. In my past life, Dad and I died tragically. This time, I wanted them to pay with blood. Dad, if you really can't live with her anymore, then just divorce. Brian and I are grown up now. Upon hearing this, the three of them looked shocked. They couldn't believe the words had come from me. Dad's hand, raised to strike, froze in the air. He took a few steps back and collapsed onto the sofa. Sophia, disheveled and panicked, pointed at me and shouted, Emily, are you even human? How could you say such things? Do you know how a broken family affects children? Brian is in his senior year. This is an important time for him. You just don't want him to succeed. I sneered at Sophia, hatred flashing in my eyes. From the moment she became pregnant with me, I had stayed home as a housewife to provide a better life for Brian and me. Dad worked tirelessly day and night. He was never afraid of hardship, only that his children might suffer. As a child, I resented him for never being home during holidays. But as I grew up, I understood. Dad was the backbone of our family. Every month, he handed over most of his salary to Sophia, keeping only a small amount for himself. His coat, washed to the point of fading, contrasted with the expensive sneakers he bought for us. At meals, he only ate buns and drank water, leaving the meat for us, always saying he was full. Thinking back, our birth caused him so much hardship. Brian glared at me, adding fuel to the fire. Emily, what kind of daughter advises her parents to divorce? Sophia embraced him and cried even louder. Yes, I raised you for so many years, and now you turn against me. Brian is still the better child. Michael, for the sake of the children, please forgive me this time. We've been married for so long. Can you really bear to part with me? Even if Emily is filial, she's just a girl. In the future, we'll have to rely on Brian to take care of us in our old age. Michael, though rough around the edges, never favored sons over daughters. Countless nights, he stayed up with me while I studied, sending messages of encouragement. Daughters must step out into the world. You can't be trapped in a small town forever, he often said. I brought you into this world so you could enjoy life, not live in someone's shadow. I walked slowly to his side, noticing how his once straight back had hunched. He was no longer the spirited young man I remembered. I sat beside him, leaning against his shoulder. Dad, you've worked hard all these years. Your daughter is grown now. Let me take care of things from here, I choked out. Hearing this, he slowly lifted his head, and our eyes met. I saw tears welling up in his eyes. Sophia signaled to Brian, who immediately knelt at Dad's feet, clutching his pants. Dad, Mom knows she was wrong. Please don't leave her. We don't want our family to fall apart, Brian pleaded, sobbing. Sophia, standing nearby, wept uncontrollably. I knew she wasn't afraid of losing Dad. She feared losing her personal ATM. That night, Dad ignored Sophia entirely. He moved his bedding from the master bedroom to the living room. Meanwhile, I was dragged into a room by Sophia and Brian, where they unleashed a storm of insults. Emily, you're heartless. How could you stand by and watch him beat me? Sophia snapped. She raised her hand to slap me, but I dodged. You brat! How dare you fight back? I'll beat you until you learn, she threatened. Do you think divorcing will get you the house? Don't even dream about it. Everything here belongs to Brian, she sneered. In my past life, Sophia wore two faces. In front of relatives and friends, she treated Brian and me equally. Behind closed doors, it was a different story. Since Brian's birth, she poured all her love into him. I wasn't just responsible for housework, but also for caring for him. If I dared sneak a bite of anything, she would make me kneel in the kitchen all night. Even as a senior in high school, people mistook me for a middle schooler. Only when Dad was home did she pretend to care. If I told him the truth, she threatened to beat me worse after he left. Despite working full-time, I couldn't escape her control. Even after Brian failed school, she insisted I quit my job to tutor him. She refused to acknowledge his lack of interest in studying. When tutoring didn't help, she pushed the responsibility onto me. You should quit and help him pass. Family comes first, she declared. As these memories resurfaced, I smiled coldly. Their delusions were about to end. Brian smirked. Girls are useless. You're just here to serve me. Pay for my wedding, and send money to our family after you're married. That's your destiny. Sophia, seeing me remain silent, raised her hand again. This time, I didn't dodge. Mom, I know I was wrong. Please stop hitting me, I said loudly, surprising both of them. Minutes later, Dad burst into the room. His eyes narrowed as he shielded me. Sophia, who gave you the right to hit my daughter? He demanded. Brian jumped in. Dad, don't listen to Emily. Mom loves her. She'd never hit her. I snorted. Stop pretending. She just slapped me. I rolled up my sleeves, showing fresh red marks. Dad's anger exploded. Sophia, if you ever lay a hand on her again, you and Brian can leave this house. Tears blurred my vision. Whether in this life or the last, Dad was always my shield. That night, as I lay in bed, memories of the past tormented me. I vowed to make them pay. The next day, while they attended a parent-teacher meeting for Brian, I installed hidden cameras throughout the house. I pretended to be away on business, but stayed in a small hotel nearby, watching their every move through the cameras. Days passed, and Dad's anger cooled. One afternoon, as I watched the footage, I saw Sophia and Brian whispering in the master bedroom. "Mom, all my friends have new iPhones. Can you use Emily's money to buy me one?" Brian whined. Sophia patted his head. "That money is for your wedding. Don't touch it. Emily doesn't know. If she finds out, we won't get a penny." Brian lay back lazily. "If Dad causes trouble again, just get rid of him. Everything in this house belongs to us." Sophia hesitated but nodded. "Fine. I'll talk to your godfather. We'll buy rat poison. It won't leave any evidence." I sat up abruptly, cold sweat dripping down my spine. I couldn't believe it. They were planning to kill Dad again. But before I could act, someone else did. The next day, I watched as Dad crept into the kitchen, glancing nervously at Brian, before making a large pot of soup. From his pocket, he pulled out a packet of powder and poured it into the pot. I gasped. Dad was planning to poison them. My hands shook as I dialed his number. "Emily? What's wrong, sweetheart?" he answered, his voice gentle. "Dad, I miss you. Can you wait for me to come home? Please don't eat yet," I pleaded. After a long silence, he agreed. "Come home, sweetheart. I'll wait." I watched as he stood by the stove for a long time. Slowly, he fished out the poisoned food and dumped it in the trash. Tears streamed down my face. Dad must have remembered his past life too. When I returned home, he hugged me tightly. "My daughter has grown up and knows how to protect me," he whispered. Later that evening, Sophia and Brian returned home. When Sophia saw me, a flash of resentment crossed her face, but she quickly masked it with false warmth. She forced a smile and spoke sweetly. "Emily, your brother's studies aren't going well. As his sister, shouldn't you help him?" Her meaning was clear. She wanted me to quit my job and tutor Brian. "Mom," I said calmly, "Brian is ranked last in his entire grade. There's nowhere lower for him to go. You should consider sending him to a vocational school instead." Brian's face twisted with anger. He stepped forward, raising his hand to strike me, but Dad caught his wrist. "Brian, have I spoiled you to the point that you think you can hit your sister?" Dad's voice was cold. With that, he kicked Brian square in the stomach, sending him stumbling backward. "A disrespectful child like you. I don't need you in this house," Dad growled. Sophia scrambled to Brian's side, shielding him as if he were a treasure. "Michael, are you insane? He's your only son. If anything happens to him, I won't let you live in peace." Dad stared at her coldly. "I'd rather have no son than a disgrace like him." The next morning, Dad and I left early. We dragged Brian by the hair to a hospital in the provincial city for a DNA test. I already knew the result, but we needed solid proof. While waiting in the hallway, I checked the camera feed from home. As expected, Sophia and her lover were there. The two of them sat in the living room, discussing ways to kill Dad and me. Dad didn't react to the footage. He simply put his arm around my shoulder and wept silently. I finally understood. After his death in our past life, his spirit lingered. He witnessed everything but could do nothing to protect me. Now, in this second chance at life, he was prepared to kill for me. I squeezed his hand firmly. "Dad, the people who need to die are them, not you." A few days later, the DNA results arrived. Dad's expression was calm as he read them. Afterward, I took him shopping for new clothes and treated him to a seafood buffet. Throughout the meal, he bombarded me with questions, worried he was bothering me. At one point, Sophia called me, screaming through the phone. "Emily, you little brat, how dare you report my bank card as lost? Return the money immediately. It belongs to your brother." I glanced at Dad, who was enjoying his food, and walked to a quiet corner. "That's my salary, Mom. Brian won't get a single cent of it." Sophia cursed and pleaded, switching tactics. "Emily, honey, you know I only have you and Brian. When you get married, do you really want your in-laws to benefit from your money instead? Let me hold on to it for you." I hung up before she could finish. Brian snatched the phone. Emily, if you don't bring the money back, I'll post online and tell everyone Dad abandoned his family. I'll destroy your reputation. I smirked. Go ahead. I'd love to see you try. I blocked their numbers after that. In the following days, Dad and I traveled. We laughed, ate, and enjoyed the world, free from Sophia and Brian's schemes. But the peace didn't last. My cousins sent me a message. Sophia and Brian had become social media stars, posting tearful videos accusing Dad and me of abandoning them. Their followers donated money out of pity, believing their lies. In one video, Sophia sobbed dramatically. I raised Emily alone while my husband worked away from home. Now he has another woman and sold our house, leaving my son and me homeless. Emily stole all our savings and disappeared. Many netizens sympathized and vowed to track me down, flooding the comments with curses. Sophia, don't cry. Those two will face justice. I watched the live stream quietly, noting the increasing donations. My phone buzzed with Sophia's voice. Emily, just return the money. I won't press charges against you. I laughed bitterly. I remembered the truth. When Brian and I were sick as children, she left me alone at home while she took Brian to the hospital. For 10 days, I survived on cold water and a single bun until Dad returned and found me. Now she wanted pity. Dad, watching over my shoulder, clenched his fists. Emily, give it some time, I said, eyes fixed on the live stream. Their wealth grew by the day, but so did their greed. Sophia soon exchanged her shabby clothes for expensive brands, flaunting luxury items in front of the camera. Meanwhile, Brian quit school and focused entirely on streaming. When the moment was right, I announced a live stream of my own. Over 200,000 viewers tuned in. As soon as my face appeared, comments poured in. There she is, the ungrateful daughter. Pay back the money you stole from your mom and brother. I raised my hand for silence. Thank you for being here today, but the truth isn't what you think. Please watch these videos. I played 3 clips. 1. Sophia and her lover, clearly engaging in inappropriate behavior. 2. Brian conspiring with Sophia to poison Dad. 3. The 3 of them plotting in our home. The chat exploded. What the hell is this? I donated to these people. They're scammers. She's cheating with another man. I held up a DNA report. This confirms that Brian isn't even Michael's son. If any of this is fake, I'll take full responsibility. I showed scars on my arms. This is the love my mother gave me. The audience fell silent, the tide turning in my favor. One by one, the comments shifted. This is appalling. I can't believe I fell for their lies. How could a mother treat her daughter this way? Brian isn't even his real son. Unbelievable. I calmly continued. Thank you for listening. As of today, my father will file for divorce from Sophia. I hope Brian's path to becoming an internet celebrity goes smoothly. From now on, they are no longer part of the Thoy family. Support poured in. Emily, you're strong. Stay that way. Yes, take care of your dad. He's the one who truly loves you. Don't let those parasites drag you down. I smiled, reassured by the kindness of strangers. That afternoon, Dad and I sat down to draft divorce papers. Sophia and Brian, on the other hand, faced growing backlash. Their live stream was repeatedly reported and eventually taken down. Their attempts to recover donations failed when their bank accounts were frozen. Furious, Sophia called Dad, begging for forgiveness. Michael, I know I was wrong. Please, don't abandon me. Emily is our daughter. We're family. Dad's voice was steely. Sophia, you don't even know the meaning of shame. I've been too kind. Don't call me again, or I'll involve the police. She tried calling me next, switching tactics to guilt trip me. Emily, Brian owes money to loan sharks. They said if we don't pay, they'll take his kidney. He's your brother. How can you stand by and do nothing? I laughed softly. Mom, you never hesitated when you broke my limbs, did you? If Brian needs money, he can borrow from those loan apps. They give hundreds of thousands without asking many questions. Before she could respond, I ended the call and blocked her. A year passed. I heard from relatives that Brian had bought a luxury home and invited the family to visit. Dad, skeptical, advised against going. But curiosity got the better of me. Brian greeted us smugly at the door, arms crossed. "Emily, your life hasn't amounted to much, huh? Can't even afford a place like this. If you beg, maybe I'll let you stay a few nights." Before I could respond, my cousin asked, "Where's Aunt Sophia? We haven't seen her." For a brief moment, Brian's body tensed. He forced a smile. "She's traveling with Dad. They're enjoying life." A loud thud echoed from a distant storage room. I narrowed my eyes. Brian's lie was unraveling. My cousin flinched. "What was that sound? Is someone else here?" Brian's laugh was strained. "Oh, that's just the dog. I keep him locked up when guests are over." A sinking feeling settled in my gut. "Brian," I said casually, "can we see the dog? I love animals." His face paled. "It hasn't been vaccinated. It might bite." No one else noticed, but I could see through his excuses. A few months earlier, Sophia had claimed they were in debt. Now Brian had a luxurious home. Something didn't add up. I discreetly called the police. When officers arrived, I unlocked the storage room, using a code I had guessed. What I saw next froze me in place. Sophia lay on the floor, her body battered and broken. Her limbs had been fractured, and stitches covered her mouth, mirroring what I had endured in my past life. Brian stood nearby, an axe in hand, mid-swing. For a moment, I felt like I was staring at a demon. The police restrained him, but as he was led away, he locked eyes with me. "Emily," he whispered with a chilling smile, "I let you live. Why did you have to ruin everything?" A cold shiver ran down my spine. I realized, in that instant, that Brian had also been reborn, just like me. Several months later, Brian was sentenced to death for the premeditated murder of Sophia and his biological father. Before he killed Sophia, he used her clean record to accumulate debt, pretending she was traveling to avoid suspicion. I wondered if Sophia had felt regret in her final moments. Maybe she did, maybe she didn't. But it didn't matter anymore. One day, the prison informed me that Brian wanted to see me before his execution. I found him thinner, bruised from prison fights. He squinted at me in confusion. "Emily, why is this life different? In the last one, we killed you and Michael. Why did it turn out like this?" I sat down, offering a cold smile. "Because I was reborn, Brian." His eyes widened in horror. You knew the whole time?" he hissed, gripping the iron bars. Feigning innocence, I called for the guards. "Brian seems unstable. Please keep him isolated." As I walked away, his voice echoed down the corridor. "I'll kill you again, Emily. You and Michael won't escape me." But for the first time, I felt free. Outside the prison, Dad and his new partner, Ms. Zhang, waited for me with open arms. Ms. Zhang, a kind-hearted woman, had supported Dad through difficult times. At first, I hesitated to accept her, but over time I saw how deeply she cared for him. At their quiet, intimate wedding, I handed her the deed to our home. "Dad is happiest when you're around. Please take care of him." Tears welled in her eyes as she hugged me tightly. "Emily, even without this house, I would love him just the same." Years passed. I rose through the ranks at work and married a wonderful man. When my daughter was born, I held her close, whispering gently, "You came into this world to be loved and cherished. I'll protect you with everything I have." The shadows of the past faded, and for the first time, our family embraced happiness and peace.